In this video, we'll look at what's changed in Directory Opus since the release of version 12 2 years ago. We have a lot to go through, so let's look at the release notes.
Bug fixes.
Thank you, end of video, roll credits. I'm kidding, of course. The full changelog is enormous and we can't cover everything, but hopefully what I show you will help you find new ways to use Opus. So let's get on. When you hover over a folder, you now get a much better view of its contents, with one file per line and wider file names. This is configurable, so if you preferred the old compact lists, you can get them back. When you hover over the status bar to see what's hidden, the list there is similar. Remember, you can click that part of the status bar to disable all filtering and see everything. For the next part, let me create a copy of one folder and then create junctions which point to these other folders. When I go up a level from where I did this, the folder size calculation includes the copied child folder, but also includes everything in the folders which the junctions point to. Sometimes that's what you want, but there are other times where you'd want to exclude the junctions. Searching preferences for junctions will highlight the two options which control this. Turning those on and recalculating the folder size means it now only counts the copied folder and nothing below the junctions. If you like the size and age graphs, but don't want them to use extra space, you can show similar graphs behind the normal size and date columns. That's not new, but you can now toggle these on and off using a button or hotkey which runs this command. On the left, I have a folder of MP4 video files. Below that is a subs folder containing SRT subtitle files, which are shown on the right. Each SRT file corresponds to one of the MP4 videos, but the names don't match. Let's fix that now. Select the videos and click Rename. Open the clipboard menu and choose the first option to copy the file's current names into the clipboard. If the Ignore Extension checkbox is on, the clipboard will now only contain the file name stems without the MP4 extensions. Now cancel the Rename dialog, then select all the SRT files and click Rename again. Using the clipboard menu, we can now paste over all the names at once. The clipboard menu also contains options to prefix and append using the clipboard data, but we don't need those now. You can see the SRT extensions have been preserved, while the rest of each name has been replaced. Pasting is also affected by the Ignore Extensions checkbox. If I close the right-hand file display and turn on Flat View, we now see everything in one place. A new feature of Flat View is that you can drag things out of a subfolder over to the folder background to move them into the main folder. With everything now in one place, I can turn off Flat View and delete the empty child folder. If you're wondering about the background colour for each season, that's done using labels, which are part of the folder format. And that's also why the SRT files are blue. The labels use regular expressions to match the odd and even season numbers within the file names. The columns which show season and episode numbers are generated by a script add-in. Here's the JavaScript, but you don't need to understand any of this unless you want to make your own columns. Back in the Rename dialog, there's a new mode which combines regular expressions with find and replace. This is handy when you want to apply a regular expression to just part of the file names. In this example, I'm changing the word show into movie, and I also want to change the text that surrounds these season and episode numbers. If I did the same thing using the normal regular expressions mode, I'd have to do extra work to capture parts of the file name that are not changing, just so I could preserve them. It's still possible, it just takes more effort. Of course, there's an even easier way to do this particular rename without using regular expressions at all. Since all the names line up, you can simply edit the first name in the preview list and have the same changes applied to all the other files. Oh, and don't forget, you can double tap the End key to right-align all the names when you want to add or remove things at the ends. Double tap Home to go back to normal. Here's a folder with various file types. If I push star and type .msi into the filter bar, I can filter on just the MSI files. As you can see, Opus now reports details such as company and product version for MSI installers like these. If you're in a folder where the columns go off the side of the window, you can now run a command to resize the window to fit. If I remove some columns, you can see that the same command can also be used to shrink a window that is too wide. I'm running this via the command field, but if you used it regularly, you could make a toolbar button or hotkey. When using navigation lock, or in other situations where the left and right show similar folders, you can scroll both sides at once by holding the Alt key and using the mouse wheel. Obviously, if you release Alt, then only one side scrolls at a time. The maximum number of thumbnail threads has been increased to 32 for those of you using the high-end desktop platform Xeon or Threadripper processors. The distance the mouse has to move before triggering drag and drop now scales with system DPI. This should help avoid accidental drag and drop on high DPI systems. If you dislike that clicking a file twice will start to rename it, you can now disable that functionality. Now, no matter how many times I click, I can only select files and won't start renaming them. You can still push F2 to rename things explicitly. When pasting files from a virtual source, such as a remote desktop session, existing files with the same name will now trigger the standard file replace dialog instead of automatically renaming the new files. This dialog lets you choose which file to keep or to rename the old or new file out of the way. When pasting text or images from the clipboard into new files, the old behaviour is unchanged and a unique name will be generated for each paste. When file selections are drawn using visual styles, selected files have lines between them due to a 1 pixel overlap of their selection boxes. Setting extra line spacing to 1 will remove the overlap. However, if you set the spacing higher, you get gaps between each file, which doesn't look great and also means you can accidentally deselect everything if you click within the gaps. If you wish for taller, easier to click items without those drawbacks, the new extra line padding option allows you to add extra height inside the selection boxes. This also allows you to keep the overlapping line, if you want it, while still making things taller. Of course, you can also increase the font size to make things larger, but that has a slightly different effect. The interaction between grid lines and extra line spacing and padding has been improved. This fixes some aesthetic issues which used to occur when these options were combined. When listing media files, such as these videos, Opus can calculate their durations and show it in a column, as so. This information has to be extracted from each file individually, and that means opening every file and reading at least some of its data off of the disk or network. That isn't a problem in normal situations, but if you're in a folder with a lot of files, or using flat view, or looking at search results or similar, the overheads can add up. And that's why things like duration are only extracted and calculated when they're being shown somewhere. The status bar can also show the total duration of all files, as well as that for just the selected files. While that can be useful, adding this information to the status bar meant that it would always be calculated in every folder, whether you wanted it or not. A while ago, we decided to block the status bar from triggering these calculations in flat view and similar situations, unless something else, such as the duration column, also required the same information. The problem is, sometimes you want to see that information, even when using flat view, search results, and so on. In the new version, you can add things to the status bar which are only displayed or calculated when you want them. Here I have a button which toggles the duration information in the status bar. The button code may look complex, but all it really does is toggle a variable on and off. Over in the status bar definition, we have a line in 2 parts. The first part says, if the variable is set and there is duration information for the selected files, then show that information. The second part is the same, except it shows the total duration instead of the selected duration. If you're confused, don't worry, just copy and paste it. We've also added some other ways to put conditional information into the status bar. The if path code can be used when you want information which is only shown in certain folders. As an example, here's something which will only be shown on the C drive. Nothing happens yet because I'm on another drive, but if I open a new tab and go to my C drive, the new section appears. If I go into a subfolder, it disappears again because I only specified the root level of the C drive. But I can add a wildcard so it matches subfolders as well as the root. The if exists code can check if anything exists at a given path. It checks for both files and folders, and it doesn't care which. Program files always exists, so this section will always be shown. Changing the path to one that doesn't exist means the section is always hidden. You aren't limited to using absolute paths, you can also use relative paths and wildcards. This section will now appear whenever the current folder contains DLL files. If I switch to a tab with some DLLs in it, the section appears. You can combine multiple conditions. As an example, let's make a message which only appears if we're in the Downloads folder, and that folder also contains DLLs. My Downloads folder is empty, so nothing appears yet, but when I copy over a couple of DLLs, the message appears. And when I delete them, the message goes away. The new if code allows the status bar to test Opus's internal commands the same way that the if and if set modifiers do in toolbar buttons. Here, I'm adding a section which will only be displayed when not in details mode. For example, it might be nice to see the selected file's size and date when in thumbnails mode, where the information is not normally visible. This would be redundant in details mode, where the information is always there in columns, so we can have this information in modes where it's useful without wasting space in modes where it isn't. You can also add comments to your status bar definition to help understand things again later or to remove sections temporarily. Finally, for the status bar, a new Advanced Preferences setting allows you to specify when the status bar is allowed to trigger calculation of duration and similar metadata. If you use a variable to toggle when the information is displayed on the status bar, you'll want to change this new setting to Always so that your variable can be the one and only thing which decides when the information appears. Okay, that's the end of part 1. Stay tuned for part 2, and until then, thank you for watching.